Hello, today I just wanted to review the basics of normal flow block elements in horizontal formatting, and this is when, for example, you need to size a block level elements when you can use one or more values of margin and width and set it to auto. For example, when one value of margin is set to auto and then width and the other margin is has the value of the value, or you can use two values of auto and three values of auto. So the rule is the property set to auto evaluates to remaining value to match the containing block. So let's take a look at the first example here. The first example is when one of the margins is set to auto. So let's take this. I already have the code here, so I'm just gonna copy and paste the code. So what we have here, we have a div, which is a containing block, or a containing or a parent, and we have a p element with some text inside the p. So div, we give a width of 500 pixel, background, and some margin just to center it on the page. P has margin left auto, width 200, and margin right 200. So in this scenario, margin left auto should evaluate to 100 pixel for P element to match the 500 pixel parent div. So we can check this with Google Chrome Web Developer Tools. So as you can see, this is our P in green, like light green, and this is our div. So let's do this, inspect, and let's see here. Just gonna click P. Okay, so what we gave to P is margin left auto, width 200 pixel, and then margin right 200 pixel. So we know that the div is 500 pixel, so I'm just gonna put it here. So margin left auto, but when we go to computed values here, so margin left evaluates to 100 pixels, so total it gives us 500, 200 right margin, left 100, 200 right margin, and then 100 left margin, and then 200 pixel widths. Okay, but the styles that we declared is left margin is auto. Okay, so auto in this scenario evaluates to 100 pixels. So next one, what happens is when we set width to auto. So let's try this. We set width to auto, and we have basically this code. So div remains the same, but now we're given the width. The value of width is auto. So we have margin right 100 pixels, margin left 100 pixels, and let's see what happens here. And in this scenario, the width auto, it evaluates to 300 pixels to match the containing div, like the containing block or the parent div. Let's check this. It's gonna see here. Let's click on this one, P. So what we have here, we gave, this is styles that we declared, auto, width auto, margin left, margin right 100 pixels, but when we go to compute it, it's showing the width evaluates to 300 pixels. So Google, on the Chrome and the browser, it evaluates the auto width, automatically evaluates to the remaining 300 to match the containing block. Okay, so again, width auto, and then computed value of width auto evaluates to 300 pixels. If we click here, we see here that initial value here is auto. Okay, so this works. So what else? Next one, scenario when there is no width declared. Let's try this. What happens in the same like HTML structure when there is no width declared? So we have containing the 500 pixels, and we have P just with left and the right margins of 100 pixels, but we didn't set any width property for this P element. So let's see what happens here. So I'm just gonna go here. So inspect, and we can do this again. Just click on this P. So no width declared. You can see here P. It has margin left, it has margin right, but there is no width. But when we go to computed values, we see the width is 300 pixels. I'm not sure why it's like a grayed out. It's probably like how it's shown in this inspector, but we can see it's 300 pixels. So the browser, it adds up the widths automatically to match the containing block. Okay, so no was declared. What else? What happens when more than one auto value is declared? So this is actually the classic example how we just sent a div on the page, and let's see what happens here. Okay, we have containing div 500 pixels, and then we have P with margin left and margin right set to auto, and the width is 200 pixels. So let's see what happens. Okay, so we have div 200 pixels. Just gonna click on this one, the P 200 pixels. Here we have P 200 pixels, margin left, margin right auto. We go to computed. Okay, so we have P 200 pixels. Here margin left auto, margin right auto, computed values, margin margin left 150, margin right 150. So the browser adds the those pixels to match the containing block the parent. So in total it comes to 500. Okay, so the next one, what happens when margin left and the widths are set to auto? Let's try this. Okay, so we have margin left and the widths set to auto. So here margin left evaluates to 0, and the width resolves to widths necessary to match parent div widths. So widths auto actually in this scenario takes precedence over margin auto value. So because they're both auto, width auto and the margin left auto. So but when we go to inspector, so you already can see that this is our P, and what happens here. So we set margin left to auto, width to auto, margin right to 100 pixels. So we're just curious about margin left and width, what happens. So we go to computed value, margin left auto, it evaluates to 0, and the width, which was auto, it evaluates to 400. So which gives us total of 500 pixels, which is the containing block, which is the width of the parent div. Okay, this one, and the next one, the last one is what happens when all three properties are set to auto. So let's try this. So margin left, width, and margin right, all three are set to auto. And in this scenario, all three properties set to auto, margins resolve to 0, and the width resolves to match the width of the parent, which is the div. So basically, yeah, so only the widths would kick in with the value. So these two guys, they would become 0 value, like 0 pixels. Let's check here. Okay, so we already can see that there is no actually margins. Let's see here, just inspect. Okay, this is our P 500. So here our styles, margin left auto, width auto, margin right auto. When we go to compute it, width 500, margin left from auto evaluates to 0, and margin right from auto evaluates to 0. So the width kicks in 500 pixels, and this is what happens with when this is the browser behavior, how it interprets, evaluates those values. Okay, again, it was just a refresher for myself, but I hope it was helpful, and if somebody can benefit from this, it's good. And as always, thank you for watching.